Hey everyone, just want to let you know we will be starting in about 5 minutes, so just bear with us, and we will be starting in about 5 minutes. Hello everyone, and thank you for joining MacMall and Adobe's webinar, All New Updates to the Creative Cloud that will revolutionize, can't say that word, revolutionize every aspect of your business. My name is Justin Feck, and I'll be your host and moderator for today. I just want to cover a few quick housekeeping issues. First off, we will be recording this presentation. We'll be sending out an on-demand version to everyone, so if you have to drop off a call for any reason, you will be able to listen to the rest of the presentation. At the end of today's presentation, we'll be conducting a live Q&A session. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please use the question pane that can be found on the right-hand side of your screen, and you can send those questions straight to myself, and they'll be addressed during the Q&A session. I would like to go ahead and introduce our presenter today. His name is Brian Wood. He's an Adobe certified instructor. And without any further delay, I'm going to actually hand things over to Brian.
Excellent, thanks. Hopefully everybody can hear me. We've got a fair amount of ground to cover today. What we're going to do is we're going to look at Creative Cloud and find out exactly what it is, how it works, I'm going to talk a little bit about Creative Cloud for individuals. We'll talk a bit about Creative Cloud for teams. There is a Creative Cloud team. We'll then go into specific applications like InDesign, Photoshop, Illustrator, and a bit of Muse as well to be able to show you what's new and what we've got going on. If you want to learn a little bit more about Creative Cloud, I know that I'm going to be showing you a lot of different things here, but there's a lot of information out there. You can go to the MacMall website. You'll see that there are several pages which are devoted to discussing or talking about what the Creative Cloud is. This one happens to be Creative Cloud for Teams. You can also go to Adobe's website. Adobe has a lot of information out there. You can check out the features, what's going on, how it works. If you go to Adobe's website, the one thing I would suggest you do is, hopefully everybody can hear me, the one thing I suggest you do is to take a look at the Creative Cloud FAQ. This is off of the home page. You can go to the products, Creative Cloud, the Adobe homepage, and this FAQ is going to take you through a lot of different questions that people have. They've kind of brought them all together, and they've got them right here with answers. So if you want to find out how it works, what it is, just different information about the cloud, you can come here. This is a great resource. This one actually helped me a little bit too. So I'm not going to go too much further in here as far as just talking about the cloud in general. I want to show you what it is. Okay, so and we've got quite a few people on the line today, which essentially means that I'm going to try and keep it a little bit slower here because of the internet connection and because of the sharing. So if things get a little bogged down, somebody will tell me. Don't worry. We're going to jump into the Creative Cloud. When you register, you sign up for the Creative Cloud, you get basically an ID. Okay, you get to sign into the Creative Cloud website. Now this is if you're an individual subscriber, let's say. Well, if I sign in, let's talk about what the Creative Cloud is and what you get. So I'm going to sign in. Now this is my account. This is my own personal account. I'm, let's say, a freelancer using this. Okay, there is, like I said before, there are Creative Cloud for Teams. There are enterprise solutions that you can use as well. But as an individual, let's say that I get Creative Cloud. There are a lot of things that I get with Creative Cloud. Okay, Creative Cloud is a way for me to file share. Okay, that's the first thing. With my Creative Cloud account, if I look right up here, you should see that I get 20 gigs of storage. Okay, you can see that right there. If you are a Creative Cloud team member, you're a Creative Cloud for Teams, each individual, last I checked, got 100 gigs of file sharing. That means that I can take files that I upload or sync. There's a bunch of ways we can do this, and I'll show you. And I can share them with other people so that they can see them. They can view them through a browser. They don't have to have any kind of Adobe application. But you can see right here that I've got a lot of files that I've been working on, and some of these are frankly ridiculous. My kid went a little nuts with Adobe Ideas. But when you work in applications, you can sync files that you work with, including Photoshop files, Illustrator files, InDesign, just about anything you want, with the cloud. And then the cloud files up here, you look right here, this is a way for us to go in and, ooh, hold on one second, sorry. I'm just getting a speaker microphone audio test here to, let me close this. Hopefully everybody can hear me if we're good. Speaker, hello, can everyone hear me? I'm hoping, okay.
Yeah, Brian, we're good.
You're good? Okay, sorry. All right, so with the Creative Cloud files, like I said, we can upload them up here several different ways. I'll show you that. But with each file that we put up in the Creative Cloud as a file sharing service, we can go through and do things like post publicly with Behance. As a Creative Cloud subscriber, you have the ability to access Behance, and you even get what's called a pro site with it. This way you can, suppose you're working in Photoshop, you could do this right from Photoshop. You could take a file and post it on Behance and get some feedback. We can do it right here as well. We can also send a link to someone. So suppose that, I'm right here. I'll show you guys how to do this on your desktop, but I can send a link from here and allow somebody else to take a look at it, or several people to look at it. I can make it private, all my images, or I can make them public, which means that I can share a link that people could go to a web browser, go look at. I could also enter an email address, and let me do something like that, and say, hey, you, go ahead and take a look at this thing. I'll send them a link. I can allow them to download it if I want or not. once they get this link, once they get this, let me just show you what it's going to look like. They'll get an email, something like this. This will probably take a second to come in, but they'll get an email that what they can do is they can click on the link that's in the email. If you look right here, hopefully I can get this to go. They don't have to have an Adobe ID. They just have to have an email. They have to have an internet connection to a browser. And if I share a file with them, they can go in and do things like comment on it. You'll see on the right-hand side, hopefully you can all see this, there is a comments area. They can look and see what comments have been made as well. If we allow them to download it, I can come under Actions right here, and you'll see Download. And if you download a file, you can download it in several versions. We got PNG and JPEG, I believe. If they're looking at the file, they can also look at file information, see the colors that are used in it, and what applications were used to create this. So you're able to share your files with other people. All right, let me go back over and go back over to my files. This will take just a second. Now, of course, in the Creative Cloud file area here, up in the cloud, we can organize our files by folder. We can delete files. We can, do different things, rename, etc. But this is one aspect of the Creative Cloud. We get storage, okay? Now, the other thing that we get, and I'm showing you all this through the browser. I'm going to show you how we can access this through our desktop as well. I'm going to go over to what's called Download Center, which is part of it. And this will take just a second to come in. We can also download just about everything Adobe makes. Okay, I'm not going to say everything, but we can download things like what used to be the design suite, the production suite, and the web suite. All those tools, if you look, the way Creative Cloud works is you're not actually running any applications through the cloud. Okay, you're downloading them to your machine, and you're running them off your machine, similar to as if you stuck a disk in and you had installed it off a disk. Similar as well, what's going to happen is when I launch it off of my hard drive, once I download one of these applications, and you can see all the different things that we have here that we can access. Once I download and I open it up, I don't need to be connected to the internet to open the application. It has to check once every 30 days. You have to be connected to the internet once every 30 days for it to just make sure that, well, you're still paying. That's kind of the idea. So you're going to see that we get a lot of the big ones. We get the Dreamweavers, the Creative Clouds. We get a lot of the edge tools. I don't know how many of you do web at all, web design, web developing. But we get Edge Animate, which is a great tool. We get Edge Code, Edge Inspect, and Edge Reflow. You also get the ability to work with what are called Edge Web fonts and a certain subset of Typekit fonts. Those you can use in your websites. You get all the big ones out here. You'll see we get InCopy as well. If you've worked with InCopy in the past, InCopy is sort of like, it's like InDesign for writers, that kind of thing. We get, let's see here, Lightroom, Photoshop. You can read all these, but we get a lot of different tools. My point here is that if you decide that you need to use one of these, you can download it, you can run it, you can install it, you can do your thing, and start using it. And if you need another tool, you can use it. So suppose you have a project you're working on and you're doing a website, and you need to use, let's say, Adobe Muse to create a website for 1 month. Well, that month you can download it, use the tool, and just not use it again. It's your call. So we get these different tools, these different applications. We also get the ability, let me go back over to my files. And this, I'll just give it a second here. I'm going to kind of race over to the right here. I'll let it load in. You also get 5 hosted websites with Adobe Business Catalyst. So that means that if you create a website using the Adobe products, you can host it in Business Catalyst, and you'll see that I've got 5 hosted websites. Now, as long as I'm still a Creative Cloud subscriber, I don't pay a monthly hosting fee. Okay, I do have to buy a URL, but that's pretty much it. So that's part of the deal. If you also want to, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Adobe DPS. If you want to create apps for the iPad, it's specifically for iPad, using InDesign, you can generate or create as many apps as you want, as you're capable of, as long as you're a Creative Cloud subscriber. And you can update them as many times as you feel necessary. Once again, as long as you're a Creative Cloud subscriber. So we get a lot of these different things. Now, one of the things about the Creative Cloud is, yes, there's a website here. Okay, this is great. We can log in. We can go see the files. We can look at our downloads, all of our different things. But we can also access this from our desktop or from our hard drive. So let me show you how that works. I'm going to go out to my hard drive here, and you can see I've got a couple of folders out here. If you look up here, now I'm on a Mac, obviously. If anybody's running PC or Windows, you'll see this down in the system tray down below, down there. Right up here, you're going to see a little symbol. This is the Creative Cloud symbol. We have this area right up here that we can open up, and you can also open this up as a window, but right now it's kind of sort of like a dialogue. It's going to show you your home. This is the typical place where you start. Okay, this is where you can access all the applications. You can access the files or the file sharing. You can also access fonts. This is something we haven't talked about yet. And you can access Behance, your Behance account. The home section here is going to show you just what's been going on. So if you updated, let's say a Creative Cloud application like Dreamweaver or something like that, you update it through this little panel right here, and it'll tell you what you've updated. It'll also show you if, let's say, somebody is looking at work on Behance or doing different things. This is kind of like your report card, what's going on. If I click on Apps to look, you'll see that it's going to show me all of the applications that I have installed currently. Now, when you first install the Creative Cloud and you have this installed and you open it up, you're probably going to see a lot of these. You're going to see a lot of buttons that say Install. For you to install an application, you just do what it says. You just click Install and allow it to install. So it's going to install and get it on your machine and get it ready to use. If there are updates, it will tell you that there are updates in here. You'll also see little flags that show up on the Creative Cloud icon, but you can update them directly through here. Now, as far as the files are concerned, let's talk about that, this file sharing. The file sharing is for file storage, file sharing, and there's also a lot of other things we can do with it. Like I said, with an individual user account, we get 20 gigs of storage. With a team, you get 100 gigs. We have on our hard drives, let me open this up. Sorry, this is going to kind of kick us over here a little bit. We have a folder called Creative Cloud Files. And what we do is we have a local copy of all these files that we work on. And what happens is it's actually synced with the cloud, so they're stored up there in the cloud. You can work on them directly off this folder. These are local copies, so I can work off them directly on my machine. When we go to do a save, then it will sync if we let it. We can tell it not to sync. We can say don't sync our files. These are all the files that I've been working on so far. Okay. If I come into one of these files here, you also notice that if I right-click on them, we do have some Creative Cloud information, some things that we can do right here. You can view it up on the cloud website. You can see what file activity has been happening. You can also do things like send a link to someone, so we can share this with someone else if we want to, right from our desktop. Back up here, if I look at the clouds, Creative Cloud, you're going to see that it gives you information about your usage, how much storage space you're using. You can also see your archive, which is basically stuff that you've get ready for deletion, at least. That's the way I think of it. And see if things are up to date or if they need to be synced. And you can open either Creative Cloud or this folder directly on your desktop. So it's a quick, easy access. Now, the next thing we get as far as Creative Cloud subscription is we get the ability to work with Typekit fonts on our desktop and our websites. Now, this is a newer feature, and they're starting to roll this out. But you can see that the fonts right here, if you want to, let me do this. I'm going to click on Browse Fonts on Typekit. So Typekit is directly integrated with the cloud. Now, this is going to take a second because I'm going over the internet, but you're going to get access to Typekit, essentially, at least a subset of the Typekit library. And what we can do is we can go and search for fonts that we want to use, let's say, in our print pieces. So suppose that in InDesign, in a catalog, I want to use a font that's found up here, like Museo Slab or something else. We can sort by the type of font we want. We can also say, hey, I'm about to grab a font. I want to use it for desktop. And so you can also use it for web, it's your call. But what we wind up doing is we wind up picking a font. Let me pick one that's a little bit crazy here so you can see it. I'll do like Muscle Narrow. I can click on Use the Font. What it's going to do is say, okay, well, let's sync it to your Creative Cloud so you can use it on your desktop. What it winds up doing is pretty much downloading it to your hard drive so you can use it within any application. I'm not talking any Adobe application. I'm talking any application. I'm not going to do this just because we're trying to save a little bandwidth here, but If I say sync it and click done, it's going to download it. Once you do that, once it does download, you will see the font listed right here. And the font, it's the font family essentially. So you can see all the different things that we have, let's say like bolds and italics, etc. You can manage your fonts and find out which ones you've already downloaded. Once I have a font downloaded, and it's there, I don't necessarily have to be connected to the internet because it's just got to sync if it does. I can go to, let's say, an application like InDesign, it doesn't really matter. And if I go to some text, let me go to this text right here. I'll zoom in just a bit. Take a second here. Let's suppose that I want to change the font and use that font that I had. Well, a new great feature in InDesign that we're going to discuss a little bit here. It's really hard to see, I apologize, but right up here where I go to pick a font, we can type in the fonts that we want to use here, and it will sort the list. We can also, the signifier will show what are called favorite fonts if we want to. We can then, if you look, there's Museus Lab. This is what I downloaded, this is what I'm working with. I can use my arrow keys to go through and just quickly preview the ones I want to use, and then apply the one that I settle on. So I'll say, hey, let's apply that one. This is my typekit font that I'm using locally on my desktop. So we can print with that. We can use it in our websites. We can use it as we wish. So not only do we get the applications, we get the file sharing and the storage, we get the fonts, so we get the ability to work with typekit fonts. We can also work with Behance. Now, for those of you that have worked with Behance before, to me this is kind of exciting. I never used Behance before Creative Cloud. I really didn't. And the reason why was because I thought it was just for designers. Well, I'm more on the web developing side, but if you look, what you can do is from applications, from Adobe applications like Photoshop, you can take a file and share it on Behance and get feedback on it. So I could see my work out there, and you could see if people have viewed it, and you can ask for feedback and say, what do you think of this? I'm working on a project. You also have the ability to go and edit a profile, work on different things. You also get a pro account, or a pro site, I should say. So you get a website where you can put up, let's say, all of your work, and you can have, it's a portfolio site that you can use, and it's part of your Creative Cloud subscription. So Behance integration tied directly to Creative Cloud in some Adobe applications that we can work with. So this right here, you can also, like I said before, you can take it off if you want to, and have it be a little dialog. It's kind of floating out here that's always open. Or you can make it to where you just click and open it, okay? Okay, so Creative Cloud, that's what we get. That's mostly what we get with Creative Cloud. What I want to do is I want to start to jump into the different applications and show you some of the what's new, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to jump into InDesign and give you a peek at some of the new things. So let me go over to InDesign. And I've already got this file open, so we'll take a look at this. One of the first things, if you are an InDesign user, one of the first things you're going to notice, anybody? The dark UI. Okay, so InDesign has gone with the dark UI, just same as Illustrator, same as Photoshop, same as After Effects, and others, but it's now gone dark, which essentially means that the UI itself is dark, okay? If you want to, you can go into Preferences and you can change this. And there's some people that don't want to look at this. We will see, let's see, I'll go to Interface, and we'll see that we can change the color theme once the preference is open here. The color theme you can pick is, we can go back to light if we want to. We can also choose, let's say, a percentage. So you can see we can go dark, we can go back to light if we want to do that. It'll take a second. And the pasteboard itself, this actually, I kind of don't like the dark pasteboard. It's my own personal preference, but it's going to match the theme color. If you want to, you can turn that off and it will go back to white. So that's your call, obviously. All right, I'll go back to medium dark and click OK, and you'll see that the pasteboard out here, if I go back, is still white. So we have a dark UI. We also have Retina support. It's 64-bit native, and it's faster behind the scenes. You're going to find that, let's suppose you make a PDF file. Okay, you go to make a PDF. I've done tests in InDesign CS6 and InDesign CC, and most of the time it is faster in InDesign CC, especially in background tasks. Another thing that we can do is in InDesign, in the past, we've been able to export as a couple different formats to be able to save backwards or backward compatible. In InDesign CC, we can save as and save backward to InDesign CS4 or later as what's called an IDML file. This is a file that you can give to somebody else with the links and everything else. They can open it in their earlier version, CS4, CS5, CS5.5, CS6, and it'll work. That's the idea. So we can now save backward to all of those versions from InDesign CC. That honestly saved me a little time. Another interesting new feature in InDesign CC is the File New dialog box. If I go to File New Document, this is something we've all done, I'm sure, if you use InDesign. You'll see the new document dialog box has had a little bit of an overhaul. A lot of the same features, a lot of the same functionality, but you'll notice there's one new thing in here, at least one big new thing that I've kind of grabbed onto. Down in the lower left corner of the new document dialog box, you'll see Preview. If I select that, we can start to set up a document. Let me move the dialog box out of the way here. We can start to set up a document, change things like, let's say, columns, gutters, etc., and preview the document before we open it. So you get a sense of what it's going to look like. If we decide we don't want it, we can always click Cancel. You can always deselect Preview, but there's a preview now when you create a new document. Let me click Cancel there. Another thing that we can do is we have a couple panels in here that we can work with. If I go under Window and look at extensions, you'll see that we have Adobe Exchange. Adobe Exchange is a way, I'm not going to open it because it's going to take a little time to go to the internet, but it's a way for you to either share things with other people, share things like swatch sets or different things you're working on, etc., or scripts, that kind of thing, or a way for you to find things like scripts and different things to use within InDesign. Adobe Cooler, come to Cooler here. Cooler, this panel, this is what Illustrator used to have, and I'll show you what Illustrator now has. But the Cooler panel allows you to search the Cooler website to find color themes. That way you can find a color theme like summer. I've got one right here. You can download them and use them within your documents. These are themes that other people have created. You can also create a theme and upload it to the Cooler website and share it with other people. Let me close that. We can also, I'm going to scroll down. This will take a second. Hold on. Zoom in a bit. There we go. We can also create QR codes now in InDesign CC. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with what a QR code is. To have a QR reader or a scanner of some kind on a mobile device, you can go in and read this thing and go to a website, do different things, but we can create these. Let me show you how we do that. The great thing is if you create one of these, you can actually, it's vector, so you can scale it, you can copy paste it to different programs. I need to create a frame. I'll create a rectangle frame, let's say. There it is right there. Now what I can do is I'll either right click on it or I'll go to Object and you'll see Generate QR Code. Once this dialog, let me get this out of the way, but once this dialog box opens, this is where we add the information for if somebody takes a QR reader, some kind of reader, and scans this thing, what's it going to do? You can have it show a hyperlink or go to a web page. You can show some text. You can have a text message sent to somebody. You can email, or you can show a business card. So like I show a business card, you can have information. I'm just going to go to a web hyperlink. I can type in a URL here if I want to. So I'll go to just, let's say, adobe.com or others. And you got to type it all in. There we go. Okay. With the QR code, aside from putting in what's going to happen, I can go to color and change the color of it. So it's going to change the artwork that's showing up. Now you're going to do the color in here, so you want to make sure you pick what you want. There is no preview right now, but you can always edit this later on. So if I pick a color, I pick this yellow here, and I click OK. You'll see what it does. So if I hover over it in the tooltip, it will tell you what it's going to do. Of course, I'm not going to test it right now, but I could I've got my iPhone sitting right here. I can take my iPhone, put it right over my screen, and make sure that I'm in high quality display. That's a mistake I always make, and test it out. Now you can, if you want to, like I said, you can take this and you can scale it. You can make it bigger, you can make it smaller, it's vector. You can copy paste it into Illustrator if you want, use it in other artwork, but it's there for us to use. Another feature, let me zoom out here. Another feature that we've got that's been greatly enhanced is working with EPUB. Now, we're not going to go through all these things because we've got a lot of other programs to get to, but if you do make EPUBs, electronic books, to kind of oversimplify it, if you do make them out of InDesign, what you can do, I'll just point you to a site here that will show you some other new features. If you go to InDesign Help, if you go from InDesign, if you go to Help under the menu, one of the menus at the end, you'll see InDesign Help. You can see EPUB enhancements in InDesign CC. You can also do a search for this on the web. You're going to see everything they've done. It's incredible what has been done. I mean, like object styles can now map to tags. We can tell it not to emit CSS. Ordered lists will work properly now. Table of contents linking will work. Indexing will work. There's a lot of things you can do that now work. There's been a lot of improvements around EPUB, and we unfortunately don't have time to go through all of them, but I wanted to point you here to show you this. There is also a PDF file that you can get, and that would not be it. There's a PDF file that talks about the EPUB changes, CS6 to CC. If you are definitely serious about EPUB, you want to get this because it will take you in detail through all the changes. You can just do a search for this, InDesign EPUB changes PDF, and it will take you to the link. So that's pretty much InDesign. Let's take a look. Let's get over to Illustrator and show you some of the new things in Illustrator. So I'm going to close up InDesign just to save a little space on my hard drive here. And I am going to open up Illustrator, which I haven't opened yet. Let me open this thing up. You can see all the splash screens have definitely changed, which is just great. All right. Okay, so I've got Illustrator open. You can see the Illustrator since CS6 has had the dark UI, and we can change that if we want to. Some of the interesting things with Illustrator, and you'll also find with Photoshop and Dreamweaver, and not currently in InDesign, but in Illustrator what we can do is we can do what's called sync settings. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to create a new document in Illustrator. Okay, so I'll go to File, New, and it's going to take a second here. I don't care what it said. I'm just going to click OK. The first time you launch Illustrator and then you launch a document, let's say I create a new document, you're going to be faced with this dialog box. Now, like I said, currently in Illustrator, Photoshop, and Dreamweaver, what we can do is we can sync our settings with the cloud. Now, what does that mean, and why would we do that? Suppose that you are working your work. You got your machine at work, and you have a bunch of settings. You made a bunch of swatches. You've got some workspaces. You've got some shortcuts that you set, etc. You go home and you got a laptop, and you need to do some more work at home. Well, as long as you're logged in with the same Adobe ID, what you can do is at work, you can sync the settings for Illustrator. They basically go up to the cloud, the Creative Cloud. You can then go to your other machine, launch it, get it out there, and it will allow you to sync the settings into that one. So it'll bring the settings into that other machine. Now, here are some of the things that we can sync. Preferences, swatches, brushes. You can see a lot of them right there. These are in the preferences for Illustrator. So you can say, let's sync, let's not. You don't have to sync. You can actually turn this off if you want to. I personally work on one machine, so for me, this doesn't make much sense unless I crash and lose everything, let's say, okay? But in the future, what's going to happen is the sync settings are going to be available down in the lower left corner down there, and unless there's some change or something happening, you're usually not going to see that same dialog box that started, okay? Now in Photoshop has a little more passive syncing because the file sizes can be a little bit bigger. So you're going to have to, if you want to sync your Photoshop settings, you're going to go in and tell it to do it, okay? Now in Illustrator, if we're working on something, this is a brand new feature too that's, I think, kind of cool. I've done it a couple times. We can share something on Behance. Let's suppose we're working on a logo and we want to get some feedback on it. Well, obviously if it's internal and you don't want anyone to see it, you're not going to do this, but you can share directly from some of the Adobe applications on Behance. As long as you're a Creative Cloud subscriber and it's going to log you in with your Adobe ID, you can take this work you're working on and share it. Now, this means that people can look at it if you want them to. They can comment on it if you want them to, or you can make it visible to just friends. You can kind of tell it, how this should work. I'm going to click cancel. All right, another thing we can do, which is just I absolutely love, the Cooler panel. The Cooler panel in Illustrator, if you've ever used it before, we were able to do it just like we could in InDesign, but the Cooler panel in Illustrator CC has changed. They made it so that currently we're not going to be able to search the Cooler website, but we can take themes that we create and actually pull them down or sync them with the Cooler website. Now, the reason why, the first I thought of it, I was like, oh man, really? This is really cool. If you, I don't know how many of you have an iPhone. Currently, I think that's still the case, but currently it's only available for iPhone. But what you can do is you can download on the iPhone an app that Adobe created called Adobe Cooler. And what you can wind up doing, this is really amazing. You can take the app on the iPhone. You can come to, let's say, a picture. Okay, I've got a water bottle I'm looking at here. And I can save a theme if I want to from my phone. It'll capture it off of a photograph or capture it from the camera. And if you look right here, you're going to see I can save that theme. There it is right there directly into Illustrator. So I just did that. I just did it right off my phone. That's actually pretty cool. I use it all the time. Okay, so Cooler, some changes there. We also have, let's take a look at some other features here. I'm going to go into some text features. Let me close this up. I'm going to open up a file. We'll look at a couple of great things here. One called Touch Type Tool. I'm going to kind of zoom through this just to get the file open so you can see it. Okay, suppose that you have this text right down here, this tropical Trex, and I asked you to make it look like that. There's a bunch of ways you could do it, but it would probably take a little while. Well, in InDesign, or Illustrator, rather, CC, we have a new tool called the Touch Type Tool. Let me show you how this works. I've got the starting text. Okay, now this is just a text box, a text area. It's a type area, okay? If we want to do this, we can use the type tool from a couple different locations. If I go to the text tool over here, you'll see the touch type tool is under there. It's also in the character panel. So if I choose or select the touch type tool, a little message up here is going to say, click on a character to select. If I click on a character in the text, now it's still text, it's just one big text box, I'll just simplify it. We can go in and do things like rotation, adjustments, horizontal, vertical scale. We can click on different letters, do baseline shift. We are essentially, I am essentially, just adjusting my character settings, but doing it visually. We can copy paste settings, so you can copy some from one and go to another letter and actually paste it on there, okay? Whoops, I pasted the letter, sorry. So we'll use the same letter. Essentially what you are doing, let me show you what it's actually doing here. Just bear with me for 1 second. And move this out of the way. In the character panel, hopefully that'll open up. If I click on a letter and I start resizing or doing different things, you should start to see the different options and different things changing over there, okay? So you're going to see that it's adjusting all the different type settings that we have, okay? So it's basically doing what we could have done in the character panel, but it's doing it visually. All right, so we've got that. We've got the convert the text area, or sorry, the touch type tool. Another feature that we have, let me open up another file here. I'm going to open up this map. If you've ever worked with text in Illustrator, this is something that I think has been a long time coming, and I'm absolutely thrilled that it's in here. If you've worked with text in here before, let me do this. I'm going to select the type tool and come out here. You know that there's two ways to put type on the page. If I click and start typing, I'm actually going to create what's called point type, okay? If I click and drag, I'm going to create area type. So we have point type and area type. Now, in the past, we couldn't switch between the two. Here's the difference, right? Area type will do sort of like InDesign. It'll reflow the text or flow the text if you resize it. Point type will actually just scale and stretch and squish the text inside. Forever and a day, it's like, well, I don't want it to do that maybe. So now what we can do is we can convert between the two. There's a menu item, but you can also, if I zoom in here just a little bit and move up, sorry, it'll take a second. If I hover over it, you'll see this little widget on the right. If I click on it once, all text frames have this. It's going to say double click it to convert. I can double click on it. It'll convert it then to the other one. So I can go to area type if I want. Same the other way. If I click on this text frame, which is area type, and I want it to be point type, I can double click on the little widget on the right and have it convert. Oops. So that way we can do the stretch and squish. Wow, I can't select anything today. There we go. Now sometimes it's going to put breaks in there. Sometimes it's going to hide a little bit of the text, but you can always fix that. Okay, we can also, when we're working with text, let me zoom out a bit. Let's suppose that I have some text out here. I've got this text frame selected, this type area selected. I'm going to go back to my and this will take just a second here. Sorry, I'll go to my character panel. We have a new way to find fonts. If I either come into the character panel, which is right over here on the right, or I come up to the control panel, either way, you're going to see that we can go in and start to search based on what we typed in. So I'll say, let's search for something like myriad. If I search and keep typing, it's eventually going to sort. I'll say myriad pro. We can then I'll use my arrow keys up and down to be able to change the font out there to see what it looks like. InDesign can do the same thing. InDesign can also do things like set favorites if you want. But suppose I have the one I want. I can hit return, or there's a bunch of ways to do that. We can also go in and tell it, don't search on the font name. Let's just search the first word. You can give it a few parameters on how to search. But I love that. The on-screen rendering also, if you've ever worked with text in Illustrator, and if you've ever threaded text frames, you know what I'm talking about. It's much better. The rendering is a lot better, a lot cleaner, a lot faster. Here's another great feature. Let's put up another file. Just 1 second. Take a second here. Okay. When we work with images in Illustrator, we can place images, and some of these CC updates were updated a few months back, but they are part of the package you get. If I want to place some images, okay, I'm going to go to File, Place in Illustrator. Now, of course, we could drag them in if we want to. We can do different things. But if I want to place some images, we can now in Illustrator CC, we can place multiple images at once. So you have a little place gun, if you will, that you can place. Another new feature is show import options, just like InDesign. They're very similar, to be honest. In the past, it used to just determine what file type it was and then show you the show import options. But if I select a couple images here and I turn on show import options, depending on if the image has import options, it will show you a dialog box or not. You'll see that I get the loaded graphics cursor technically, and what I can do is cycle through the images and place the ones I want. I can also press escape not to have them. Let me do this. I'm going to click and drag to place the image. You can also just click to place it at 100%, and I'll click and drag, and there we go. Got our images. Now, the same thing with images. A couple of new things with images as well is suppose that I've got an image here, and I click on this one. I can tell it's linked because it's selected and it's got an X through it. The links panel has been updated or improved. If I look at the links panel, now you can access the links panel under Window if you want to, or you can do it up here. There's a couple places to do it. But up here in the upper left corner, you'll see all the images I have selected. If I want to see more information about that, like, I don't know, what kind of distortion, what kind of changes I made to it, for instance, or modification dates, we used to have to go to a dialog box. Now what I can do is double click on an image or click the arrow at the bottom here, and you can see all the information. You can even go in and say location, let's go show it in the Finder, or if you're working on Windows. So that allows me then to see the information on each image. Another great feature related to images, if you've ever taken an image and embedded it in an Illustrator file so you don't have to deal with the link, you can now unembed as well. So if I have an image selected in Illustrator CC, and there's a couple ways to do this, but I go up top to the control panel right up here. You'll see embed. Click on embed. Now, this is where my import options are going to show up, and I can do what I want. This is a Photoshop file. I'll just click OK. It's now embedded. Well, now what we can do, we could do that before, but now we can unembed. And you can unembed from several places. If I click unembed, it's going to allow me to pull that out, and we can save it in two different formats. We can save it as a Photoshop file, or we can save it as a TIFF. You can see right down here. Once it's unembedded, it allows you to put it where you want. It's going to link then to that unembedded file from the Illustrator file. Okay, so just some really great things about working with that. Now, another great thing that we can do, let me zoom in here. You guys, I love Illustrator. I'm not going to lie. I used to hate it. I'm not going to lie about that either. I used to be a freehand user. But I got into Illustrator, and I finally, it grew on me, and I started to really use it a lot and love it. But here's a new feature that we have. It's an improved feature, I should say. Suppose that we want to take this coffee mug and we want to put like perspective distortion on it. If you look over on the left, you'll see that we have the free transform tool. And we've had this thing for a while. If I click on free transform, the new thing here that we have is it's touch enabled, which means if you have a touch device, I've got a 21-inch touch device, and using my fingers, I can go in, and instead of having to hold 15 keyboard shortcuts down with perspective distort, you can now just use this tool, this widget. So if you want to go in, you can use the distort features, the different things you want to do. I can do, let's say, a perspective distort. If I turn it on, it's like switching to another tool. I can then go and say, hey, let's distort in perspective. There we go. You can also do a free distort if you want to. For touch devices, there is a constraint. So it's similar to holding down the shift key. Now, you can't do it unless you're doing, let's say, free transform, but it's like holding down the shift key. So this is what I'm saying when I'd say touch enabled. So using less shortcuts to be able to get free transform to happen. Okay. Find in swatches, there's a lot of little things that are available that are new. We're not going to go through that type of thing. We got to get to Photoshop. A couple of last things here. I'm going to leave this one open. Let me get out of that. I'm going to open up a file here. I know I'm going to go kind of fast here. Don't worry, just to open this up. You'll catch up. Now suppose that, let me scroll down a little bit. I don't know how many of you have ever worked with brushes in Illustrator, but in the past we could never use a raster image in a brush. Well, now we can. We can use raster images that are embedded, that's the key, in a brush. If you look at this monogramming right here, this is a brush taken from a picture that is a pattern brush, and I'll show you how we did it. So let me zoom out a bit and go right up here, and we'll get started on this. Here's the initial image. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller just so that we have it. Make it a little smaller. So this is a raster image that's been embedded. If I go over to my brushes and take a look, I'm going to create a new brush. You're going to see we've already got one just as the demo, but I'll create a new brush from that, and we typically will select the artwork first. You can do it a couple ways. You can use 3 brushes to get this to work. We can actually use scatter, art, or pattern using raster images. The other 2, I believe, don't do it. So I'll choose pattern to make a pattern brush. And you're going to see exactly what it does. It's just going to take the raster artwork and repeat it. One of the best things I think here is, let me just click OK. I'm going to apply my brush to this vector artwork over here on the left now. So click on the brush to apply it. Okay, you can see it's a little too big. All right, let me zoom in just a bit so you can see this. The artwork is big, so I'm going to go change what it looks like. We also have the ability to work with corner tiles now that are auto-generated. If you've ever worked on a brush, this can be one of the sticking points, one of the hard parts. But there are now 4 different auto corners to work with: auto-centered, in-between, sliced, and overlapped. I'm going to choose auto-sliced, and it's going to apply it. And I'm going to change the scaling here to make it a little smaller. There we go. And I'll also do the inner here. I'll do auto-centered on inner. I'll click OK if you watch. What it's going to do is it's going to apply it to the stroke, and you can see, there we go. So we now have auto corner generation for brushes, as well as the ability to work with raster images that are embedded. One of the last things here with Illustrator, let me get to this page again. Take a second to get there. I'm not going to show you everything here because there's so much to go over, but I want to introduce you to this. If you work in Illustrator, and let's say you do, you're a web designer and or web developer, okay, you make web pages in some form or another. In the past in Illustrator CS6 anyway, we could only export as JPEG, GIF, PNG. The HTML, all that stuff was taken out. In Illustrator CC, we now have a new panel called the CSS Properties panel. I'm going to open this up. This is actually kind of amazing. I'm a developer, and I get a lot of Illustrator files from my designer, and a lot of times what happens is I got to figure out things like leading or line height, font size, etc. But what I can do now is I can click on content in the Illustrator document here, and what it's going to do is if it happens to have a style applied, it's going to generate, and these are character styles, it's going to generate the CSS for me that I can use. I can take this content, this CSS, and just copy it and go over to, well, I can go to Adobe Edge, I can go to Dreamweaver, I can go whatever tool I'm using for my web and paste it in there. Now you can do it on object by object basis. You can do it for the whole document. It'll generate all the CSS necessary to make this. It is not going to create HTML. I'll tell you that right now, okay? But if you're working with a developer or you're going to go to another program to do this, this is phenomenal. It really is. Especially if, check this out. Suppose that you have, let me zoom in a bit. Suppose I have some vector artwork that it can't use CSS to make that, and it can't decide. It's like, what do you want me to do with that? Okay. what we can do is we can actually generate CSS. I'm going to do one little thing here real quick. Illustrator will allow you to save that typically as a ping that is transparent without slicing and export that so you can use it. So I don't slice anymore in Illustrator because it's gonna generate this file for me as a transparent ping. It's usually going to be a ping 24, ping 32, depending on the effects on it. But you can get that out of there. You can then take it over and use it in your website. Another great thing about Illustrator CC is the fact that you could copy content, vector content like this, and paste it into certain programs, like let's say Adobe Edge code, and it will paste SVG, so scalable vector graphics. So, all right, we got to get over to Photoshop. Getting low on time here, so I'm going to make sure I close everything. I'm not going to save any of this. Let's get over to Photoshop. Now in Photoshop, you can see we had the dark UI from the past version. We can sync files in Photoshop, but in Photoshop, you need to initiate this. Now, sync settings, if you can see up there in the preferences, this is similar to Illustrator, where it's going to sync things like swatches and different things like that to the cloud, so you can use it on another machine using the same Adobe ID. Okay. Now, another thing we can do is, I didn't quite talk about this earlier, but what I want to do is I want to open up a file, and I'm going to open up a file from my Creative Cloud file. So I'm going to work off of one that's local, that's actually going to sync to the cloud. So I'll open this one. And then what I'll do is I'll just make a stupid change. I know, don't ask. And I'll save it, okay? Now, what it's going to do is it's going to sync. I don't know if you noticed it up there, but it's telling me that it is syncing with the cloud. What I want to do is I want to go take a look at that file and see what's going on with it. So I'm going to go to Open Folder. I'm going to say, let's look at that ASCII ping. Let's go out and take a look at it on the website. And we're going to look at what's called file activity. When you work on these files, what's going to happen here, it's going to take a second. It allows you to save versions. That's what I'm trying to get to here, okay? You're going to see that we have multiple versions. Now, if it's a big file, it's going to be saving those versions. We can get rid of them if you don't need them, but you can see the different versions I have over here on the right. So it's a versioning tool as well. So if we do save, put it in our Creative Cloud folder, and do sync it with the cloud, we have the ability to restore or not, okay? All right, let me go back over to Photoshop. Kind of quick. Let me close that one. Let's take a look at some of the big things that are just phenomenal in here. Smart Sharpen. Okay, I'm going to show you this one first. With sharpening, hopefully you can all see this image. Let me zoom in just a bit. Smart Sharpening has been made smarter. If I go under Filter, and you can also use a Smart Filter for it, but you're going to see that we have two new Sharpen filters, one called Shake Reduction and one called Smart Sharpen. This is not new, it's been improved. But if I go to Smart Sharpen, it'll take a second here, but you'll be able to see that if I'm going to crank up the sharpening here, probably way too much, I know. But you'll see that it's smarter now. What it's going to do is it's going to look more at edges. It's going to leave some of the modeling that it used to do out. You have the ability in Smart Sharpen to use a legacy. So if you want to use legacy, you can do that just to see what it looks like, and you can see a lot of the modeling that's happening. So Smart Sharpen has been improved. I'm just going to leave it there, okay? Let me open up another file and show you something called Camera Shake. I love this. All right, I'll take just a second to open here. The Camera Shake filter, if I go to Filter and go to Sharpen, you'll see Shake Reduction. Let me just show you this. Suppose you've taken a picture and it was a little blurry. There's a little bit of shake going on. Well, using the Shake Reduction filter, you can pinpoint either individual areas of the photograph or more than one area of the photograph and tell it to stop the shaking, okay? This is black box stuff, you guys. This is pretty amazing. It really is. You can go in and pinpoint different areas. If you decide that, hey, the leaves look a little different, this one needs to happen too, you'll be able to see that it's creating masks that you can preview. You can kind of take a look at and see what it looks like. You can also go in and check out detail and see what it's going to look like. So the detail itself, this little window you can pop out and kind of take a bird's eye view of what's going on. So a little bit before and a little bit after. And there we go. Pretty phenomenal. It's a great filter. I'm going to click cancel, and I will leave that open. We will close it though. let me just show you one little thing. There is a new, I know all of you have done image sizing in Photoshop, but if I go to image size to take a look, the dialog box is changed, different orientation, different look, feel, etc. But we also have a new feature here called Preserve Details Enlargement. This is phenomenal. It really is. If you are taking an image, and let's say you're going from small, like 120, 150 ppi, and you're enlarging it and going up to 300 or doing something like that, this new resampling option, Preserve Details, does a better job. It really does a much better job of bicubic smoother. It's going to take a few seconds longer because it's got to crunch more data, but it does a really good job. So we have a new resampling option with image size. You got to try that one out. We've got a lot of features that we had before in previous CC updates. We have things like the blur gallery. If I come under filter and you see the blur galleries, those were new. We can also now convert for smart filters and use the blur galleries as a smart filter, which basically means non-destructive editing. You can turn it on and off, change the options later on. Another feature, let me make sure I've got everything here, is the ability to work with conditional actions. If you guys have worked with actions in the past, we can create an action that says if the image is, let's say you got a bunch of images, we can say if an image is landscape, run this action on it. If it's portrait, run this action on it. So you have conditional actions. These are something that have been in Photoshop for a few months now. But another feature that we have is rounded corners. So I'm going to go to rounded rectangles here and open up a file. Suppose you do web design, okay? You do web design, and you want to work with some shapes. Well, we've been able to work with shapes for quite a while. If I look over at the shape tools on the left, and I select, let's say, the rounded rectangle tool, I'm going to click and drag. One of the new things here, there's a couple new things, but one of the new things is the ability to, in the properties panel, to be able to change the corner radius, either independently or together. You can select multiple vector objects and do the same thing. It's really come a long way. It's really coming a long way, I should say, to kind of finishing working with these types of vector shapes in Photoshop. All right, we've got a few seconds. There are some camera raw updates. I'm not going to get to those right now, unfortunately, but let's just take 1 minute. We're going to take a look at working with Muse and just talk for a second about what Muse is. Muse is if you've never used it before, Adobe Muse is part of your Creative Cloud subscription. It's the ability to create a website using drag and drop. It's almost like InDesign for the web. I think Muse is great for building websites that, let's say, a sponsorship event or a single event or a portfolio site, something like that, like a small business website. The idea here is that if you look right here, I've got a site that's already open. Muse is a visual tool that allows us to add pages, create our site, work with master pages, similar to working with InDesign. If I open up a page, take a look, we'll see the application kind of come to life here. And let me zoom out just a bit. Hold on 1 second. Muse has been around for a little while. Some of the new things in Muse CC that we can do, one of them is parallax scrolling. Parallax scrolling, if you're familiar with that, or not familiar with it rather, let me preview this for you. It'll just take a second here. Whoops, I'm going to cancel. Preview it rather. Parallax scrolling is the ability to take content and move it at different speeds and in different directions. It's going to be really hard over the webinar to see this, but I'm going to move just a little bit. I don't know if you can kind of tell, but see that leaf on the left? It's moving at a different speed. A lot of you have seen websites like this before. Great way to be able to do things like this. So in Muse CC, we can now work with parallax scrolling. And they just updated Muse the other day. I think it was either yesterday or the day before. And there is now a scroll effects panel where we do this scroll motion or parallax scrolling. In the past, previous versions, we had to go up and it was kind of annoying. You had to go to the effects menu or other places. We now have a panel for that. Muse CC also now supports layers. So working with layers, similar to working with layers in InDesign, it's actually more akin to InDesign and Illustrator, the way they both work, because we have sublayers, or you can see the content on the layers if you want. We also now can work with forms in just about any device, and any host, I should say. So in the past, we were limited to hosting Muse websites on Business Catalyst, and the forms working only on Business Catalyst. But now we can host on any platform, and that's been true for a while, but the forms will work on just about any host you have. We can also sync or work with in-browser editing. If you have a client, and this is new in Muse CC, but if you have a client and you host your website through Muse on Business Catalyst, which means that you're going to publish using a publish method like this, you can send your, let's say, your client a URL. They can go log in to a browser, and they don't need Muse, and they can make simple edits to the website using just a browser. Now, I'm talking simple edits, okay? But this is called in-browser editing. So with Muse, we've got parallax scrolling. We now have, they just introduced another feature, which is the ability to take a menu and make it change based on location. So if you're snapping or pinning something, it'll change. That one's a little out there. I had to show it. But we also have layers, widgets. The forms work in just about any host. And there's a slew of other features that are brand new in this program, Muse CC, but we're pretty much bumping our head against time here. So I'm just going to wrap it up and say there's a lot going on. There's a lot new. Hopefully you got some information on working with Creative Cloud, how it all works. There's a lot of information out there. You can go to the MacMall website. You can talk to a MacMall team member. Adobe has the great FAQ I showed you earlier, but there's a lot of great stuff out there. So let's take a look and see if we have any questions. How about that?
There was an initial question about the compatibility between Creative Cloud and earlier versions. You kind of think you touched upon it in the presentation, but maybe you want to just reiterate.
That's great. Good question. It works the same, honestly. If you have a CC version, the idea is that with CC, you're always up to date. With Creative Cloud, okay, you're always up to date in applications. If you want to give it to somebody else, you're going to do exactly the same thing as you did before. You know, CC is a version, if you will. So if you're in InDesign, you're going to save backward. If you're an Illustrator, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to pick a backward compatibility like CS6, CS5, CS4. So it's very similar to the way we have done it in the past. Also, a lot of people ask, well, how many machines can I put this on? It's the same as before. You can put it on 2 machines that you use the same Adobe ID to log in with, and that's how it works. All right, let's see if there's anything else here.
Can it work between 2 different platforms, Mac and PC, basically?
Yep, that's a great question too. Yes, you can. This is what freaked me out. I'm not going to lie to you, but when I go to download the file, like look at the download center. This will take a second, sorry. You'll notice that it says download. It doesn't say Mac or Windows. It basically what it does, it just looks at what you're on and downloads what you need. Okay. So yes, you can take the files, go back. It's the same as it always was. Your files are stored locally unless you decide to sync them with the cloud. If you stop Creative Cloud, you still have all your files. If you have them in the cloud, you can also just get them down if you want to. But yeah, it's compatible across platforms, the same as it has been.
Let's see, Maureen asked, it sounds like you're recommending using this Creative Cloud version. She's currently using CS6. I guess she's just asking if that's your recommendation.
Yeah, you know, it's a good question. It depends on if it suits your needs. That's the way I look at it. To me, I update fairly frequently, and the reason why is because I've got a lot of clients who do, and I want to stay up to date with the tools. And some of the new features, kind of they incentivize me to update, and that's something you have to look at. I also do use the file sharing now. There's a while there, I've got Dropbox, I've got like 15 other services that I use, but I've started kind of moving over to using the Creative Cloud because it's part of the subscription. I also create a lot of apps in DPS for clients, so it kind of made sense for me to do it. It really you just have to look and see, you know, if it makes sense for you right now. You know, that's the idea.
So for type management, should I stop using Extensys and start using Typekit if I do a lot of print?
No, you don't have to. You really don't. That's a good question. I've had that question before. You can still continue using your software, your management software. Typekit is just an addition. It's not going to be everything. It's not the entire, let's say, Adobe library. It's a lot of fonts, don't get me wrong, but you can use it in addition.
Okay. Once the type is downloaded and used, if the CC membership is discontinued, can I still use the type from Typekit or edit the document in which it was used?
Yeah, I don't know that. I honestly don't. This is something that this feature is not even rolled out to everybody yet. They just started doing it. I'm one of the earlier users of this, and I haven't tested that, to be honest. So I apologize. I wish I could answer that question, but I can't. My thought is that you will be able to use it. That's my thought. Yeah, that's probably going to be the case, but don't quote me on that.
Judy asked if you know the schedule for the rollout of the Typekit syncing.
I honestly don't. They're just starting to do it. They've got some initial people they're doing it to right now, and it may take a month. It may take 3 months. I'm not sure. They haven't told us that.
Okay. What's the best alternative to Fireworks?
Best alternative to Fireworks. Now, Fireworks is still there. It is Fireworks CS6. It really wasn't updated. You can still use Fireworks. You don't have to kind of quit that ship. I know a lot of people that do. A lot of people that still use it. I went over to Illustrator, and Illustrator is not Fireworks. I know that. And it can't do half the stuff web-wise that Fireworks can do. You don't have to jump ship. Don't worry about it. Just keep using Fireworks for now. I don't know what's going to happen to it. I don't know if anybody at Adobe knows that, but we'll see.
Okay. This is more a question for me. I'm trying to look it up. Is the price of subscription for Creative Cloud? We have, I think CC, it depends on what you get, right? So you can do it per app, or you can do it by the whole CC.
Yeah.
And I think what the per app cost is like $19 a month if you do a 12-month.
Yep.
Yep. And then I believe it's $39.99 or $49.99 a month for everything.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways in. If you have previous versions of Creative Cloud, if you are coming at it from CS6, there's a different price. If there's a ton of different pricing models.
Yeah.
Most of the time, though, you are going to get the price break if you do the year contract.
Right. Yeah, there seems to be a significant discount for doing the yearly.
Yeah.
The easiest way is to just contact one of the MacMall representatives or your customer service people, and they'll help you figure out what's going to work best for you. Let's see. Is Fireworks worth learning, or can a lot of it be done with Photoshop?
It kind of depends on what you want to do. Fireworks has a lot of built-in capabilities, such as pages, master pages, working with CSS, et cetera, that other programs like Photoshop and Illustrator just can't touch. So it kind of depends on the path you want to take. Now, one thing that you're going to find coming up here is that, I'm going to scoot down here, Adobe Edge, where are we at here? Edge Reflow. I don't know if you can see it right here. But Edge Reflow is a tool that's out, and it's a CC version tool, but it's not quite baked yet. It's not quite finished, but you can still use it. You can use it right now, but they're going to have tight integration with Photoshop CC, which means that you're going to be able to create a responsive website using Photoshop and Edge Reflow and do it visually. So in some cases, you may not need to use the full suite of tools that Fireworks has, but I'm not telling you not to use Fireworks. So just know that Fireworks was not updated. It was not updated to CC. That was my understanding. It's still at CS6, so take that with a grain of salt.
It looks like it's the ones with the edging on the borders or icons that look like they're still maybe they still be the CS6, and the ones with the gradiated background or the striped background looks like they're the new ones.
No, they kind of the Edge tools have the stripy background, but you'll see Fireworks here as CS6, Dreamweaver as CC. So yeah, they kind of just But
no visual cues. All right.
Yeah.
Just wondering.
Exactly.
Let's see. Can I sync my work in 2 different platforms?
Yeah, you can. You totally can. Yeah, you can have that's what I actually do. I've got a bunch of machines, and currently I've I've just been using my one machine, like I said earlier, but in the past I have, when I started using this, I have a Windows laptop that I'll sync stuff to. So yeah, you can do that too.
Okay. Well, I think we're a little bit over on time. I appreciate the Brian, I appreciate you doing this presentation for us. I hope everybody got some really great information. We will be sending out the on-demand version, so if you guys miss anything, you'll be able to listen to it. Again, thanks everybody for your time. Thanks, Brian.